Hi there and welcome. I'll show you everything you need to know about root pruning and why it's so important. I'll share tips throughout the entire video. I'll be working on 3 different sized pots. These were last root pruned 1 year ago. I have a tub of fresh soil and mulch we'll be using. So I'll be pruning the top branches as well, so take note of how it looks before I start this process. Here are a list of necessary and optional items to perform this. To make this video worth your time, I'll be narrating while the film is rolling. You'll see me do this on all 3 trees so you can see the consistency in the process. I'll cover everything you need to know about root pruning and the reasons why it needs to be done, whether you plan on sticking with the same size pot or moving up to a larger pot. The short story is to do this on a semi-dry root ball. Remove 1/3 of the root ball, then replace the old soil with slightly damp fresh soil, then top it off with a thin layer of mulch. So what I'm doing here is making the first of 4 cuts on each side of the root ball. As you can see, I'm using the reciprocating saw, which works amazingly well. I ended up switching to the cordless saw and it worked even better because it's lighter and easier to control. Now these trees are not considered root bound, but the reason I do this every year is primarily to maximize the growth potential in this pot. It also allows the water to penetrate the soil much easier rather than running off the surface and going straight to the side of the pot. I have another video with me root pruning using a dull machete. I'll be honest, it's comical. It's also inefficient, but it can certainly be done. An electric saw is a much better option for sure. Alright, so the 4 side cuts are done. Now the 5th and final cut will be the lower quarter of the root ball, which I'm about to do right now. Now if you take a look at what we're left with, you can see that we have a pretty dense block of roots. Imagine root pruning as a way of allowing the roots to breathe better. Okay, so we're done with this step. Now we're moving on to the preparation of the fresh potting soil. The objective here is to get the new soil damp and not soaked. The reason is these trees have just gone dormant. I'll be placing these in an unheated garage for about 3 months, and I don't want a soggy pot or I'll be introducing mold. During dormancy, you'll want the mix to be barely damp and to never completely dry out. So to put things in perspective, look at how much we actually removed from this root ball. I know it looks like torture, but I assure you this is the best thing you can do for your tree. Besides, how can you continue expanding your fig collection if you keep increasing the pot size for all those new varieties you want to grow? Trust me, I've been there, and you reach a point where you have to scale back in various ways. Okay, let's put this tree back in its home. What I'm doing here is placing a new bed of soil on the bottom of the pot. Start with just a few inches of soil, then take the tree and place it in the pot to see where the surface of the root ball will end up. Continue adding until ultimately you end up with roughly 3 inches of space between the surface of the root ball and the lip of the pot. I had to refill the tub here, but as you can see, as I'm adding the soil, I'm shaking the pot every so often and gently compressing around the sides of the root ball to make a snug bond. I also don't want any air pockets. Next, you'll want to give it a light watering to assist with removing any air pockets. Remember not to oversaturate the soil. Now let's top it off with a thin layer of pine bark nuggets or mulch. This helps the soil with moisture retention. There's footage of me top pruning coming up in this video. Okay, let's prune this big boy. Notice my hand placement and how I maneuver the pot and trunk simultaneously. Even with a semi-dry root ball, this was very heavy, so be mindful of your limitations. While I'm performing surgery on this tree, let me educate you a bit more on this subject. The best time to root prune is during dormancy. I live in zone 7, so I can comfortably root prune between December and February. You should never root prune while the tree is actively growing. This will interrupt activity tremendously. So what happens if you don't root prune your potted trees? Growth activity will begin to slow down after about 2 years. Add another year or two of neglect, and the tree may become stagnant, even with a proper watering and fertilizing schedule. This is because the pot becomes root bound. The roots wrap around the pot and eventually have nowhere else to go and ultimately suffocates itself. So the loose soil that I've cut off can certainly be reused. I'll remove the cut roots and either add the soil to my garden or use it for another tree. The nutrients you provide during the growing season will be the driving factor for the tree's productivity. Now it's time to backfill this pot. Notice I'm using a small nursery pot instead of my hands this time. A bigger tree means more soil to replace, and this definitely speeds up the process. The same methods apply with any size pot. I'm filling the base with enough soil so the surface of the root ball will end up about 3 inches from the lip of the pot. Notice how I'm adding a little water and blending the mix at this point. Since the tree is so big, I want to ensure the base is damp enough so I won't need to saturate the root ball from the top. Remember, this tree will be dormant for 2 to 3 months. Once again, I'm shaking the pot as I add soil to prevent air pockets. This is very important. It's okay to gently press the soil to compact it, as it secures the tree to the pot much better. Finally, add a little water and top it off with mulch. So now it's time to prune the top of the tree. The most important part of root pruning is to ensure you prune the top growth so you balance what you've removed from the roots. If you think about it, you just butchered the root ball. You can't expect the top growth to be sustained with half your roots gone. Prune at least a third of the branches to give you a well-balanced tree. In fact, pruning even 3/4 of the branches will not damage the tree. The shock will only improve the health of the tree. Now we've come to the third and final tree. By now you should feel comfortable with the process. Once you've found your cadence, root pruning can be done rather quickly. You'll see me pruning the top branches of this small tree in just a minute. Let me say that top pruning can be an art, and I'll admit I'm no artist. The general principle that I apply is to leave at least one node after the cut. So the following season, a new branch will emerge from this node and grow in the general direction that I want it to. Now you can prune small weak growth all the way down to the main trunk. The added bonus to all this pruning is that you now have cuttings. As I wrap this video up, I want to thank you for watching. Please comment below with any questions or suggestions. I'll be posting more videos, so if you subscribe, you'll get notified when they're published.